Hey guys, Jaden and Nick here from Ice Hockey Aussies, back from a little bit of a holiday, long hiatus. Since the last time we've done a video, we're just here to discuss just a couple topics, just us really just talking off the top of our heads about the postseason after Florida winning the Cup in Game 7. Good to see them at Game 7. But we're here to just talk about some moves that two teams have done today. Well, not today, but Toronto and Nashville. We'll be probably doing these throughout the weeks, just covering a few teams, a few moves, and stuff. But we thought we'd start with Toronto and Nashville. Starting off with Toronto, and I'll pass it off to Nick to see what his opinions are on their postseason and what they've done.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're starting with Toronto because it's definitely a hot topic at the moment, especially with the discussions around Mitch Marner and why he sort of hadn't been traded or hasn't been traded yet. And it's looking more and more likely that they're going to keep him. There's talks that they're in, re-sign discussions with Marner as well. So I don't really know how that's going to look, but that's one of the big hot topics going around for Toronto at the moment. And there's a lot of mixed opinions with it where, Toronto fans don't want to see Marner go, but also like, how do you keep him?
Mm.
And the core four has got you nowhere really. And then it's now sort of going to be earning more than ever. With Matthews and Nylander already getting a raise. But yeah, let's sort of chat about some of their moves because they have made a couple. And I do feel like they've done reasonably well. And addressed a couple of areas. They bring in Chris Tanev, which is a massive get. A lot of people talking about that length, the 4 years on that contract, and obviously him already being 34, but he's been a really solid defender throughout his career, and I think even if he doesn't get to the 4th year of that contract, I think this season, next season, you're gonna get a good Chris Tanev, and he's going to be really useful for Toronto. So I don't think it was a deal made for the entirety of it. I think they understood that he may go on long-term injured reserve at some point, or they may have to bury it. But they needed to get him for the now if there are any chance to win the cup. And then obviously OEL, which Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I think is a really underrated pickup as well. I thought he was extremely useful for Florida in their run to win the cup. So they get two good defensemen for that blue line, which has been a real struggle point for them. So yes, I think so far just those two moves alone, I feel has improved this Toronto team. They still have the same issues in terms of goaltending. Is Wall going to be, is he going to stand up? Is the addition of Stolarz going to be enough as of a backup if Wall doesn't perform and that sort of stuff? But so far I feel like on the back end they've made good moves to really improve their chances of that postseason season run. The question still to me remains around the forward pack.
Yeah, well, that you look at a core four or any other team, they've either got a one defender or a two defenders or a goaltender in that core four on highest paid players. Toronto is the only team that have all four being forwards, really. And look, they've shown it's not a recipe for success. It'll get you to playoffs, but then playoffs is a different game, and you need then defending and goaltending, and they just don't get it. So it is good to see that they've made additions in regards to the defensive side of things, signing on Wall, bringing in a backup in Stolarz, or even possibly playing first, depending on who performs. The problem is with the renewals of Wall getting the new contract, they still have to re-sign Robertson and all all the other people that are still UFA. Knees will come up next year along with Mana and Tavares. And all the people getting new money and whatnot, their salary cap situation still doesn't work out in regards to this core four. the salary cap goes up, but all these people getting pay rises, they still don't get room to add anyone new. Add another
Well, yeah,
$6
they
million
actually,
contract.
yeah, well, they actually lost money.
Yeah,
The cap went
they
up
lose
by
money. Yeah,
$4 million, 4 mil, but it was already spent on two players that they already had last year because
and it will
Matthews
happen
took a
next year as well.
yeah, so Matthews took a 1 point something million dollar increase, and Nylander got a $4 million increase. So just those two players, they're already down on last year's cap.
Yeah,
So
and you say
um,
what? Mana gets 12.5, maybe 13, but probably 12.5, something in that ballpark. Maybe 12 if you're lucky. Um,
I
so
think it's worth it.
so there's another mil of the salary cap increase going down the drain. Then you obviously got to resign. Robertson has to sort of be resigned this year, but then you got like knees next year. So look, they got some issues in regards to the salary cap still. Even when Tavares comes off the book, sure, 11 mil comes off the book, but you still have to replace that second line center.
Well,
That
he'll resign. He'll resign in
yeah,
Toronto. And it will be at a lesser
I'd say
cost.
6 mil, depending on the season he has, obviously. But
I
at the
mean,
moment, probably 5-6 mil
the way
range.
he's playing, he could ask for 8 because you think someone will talk about later, but Stamkos just signed for 8, and
And that's
Tavares is still
more of a
putting up
tax
a
haven
point.
too, compared to
Oh, exactly,
Toronto.
exactly,
Tennessee
and
and Florida are the tax havens, and that's where Stamkos has been playing. Lucky man.
exactly. So it's yeah, they will get some money back with Tavares, but again, you save 5 mil on Tavares, say, but you may have to spend an extra 1.5 mil on Mana already. So you're really only getting 3.5 mil added. And then, as you said, like Nick Robertson's an interesting one. He he's requested a trade. Whether or not they do that and all the rest,
Yeah,
that situation's going to get
they got to
ugly by
sort
the
that
looks
out.
of it.
Yeah.
Exactly, but they do have Nyes that they've got to re-sign, and he's looking really good. What sort of deal does he take? But all the rest of their contracts are pretty much set in stone. Also, the what is that? $2.9 million increase for Wall. Yeah, you look at next, like not even the season that's coming up, but the season after. They're going to be strapped for cash, especially if they keep Mana, which is just one of the reasons why I don't understand why you wouldn't be looking to move him now. He's got value. A team that trades for him can get an entire season under their belt with
Yeah,
him.
he's at his
You're not.
highest value right now. Right
Well,
now is
he
your
is
highest
because
peak.
the only way you're trading him if you're Toronto before the deadline is if you're not making playoffs. And if you're not making playoffs as Toronto, your fans are going to be, they're going to be kicking up stinks because this team is going to make the playoffs. But what does that do in terms of Mitch Marner? You're now going to be forced to either re-sign him or trade him before playoffs or lose him completely for nothing. And you can't lose him for nothing. That's too good of a player to lose for nothing.
Yeah. Well, they have also got a new coach now as well, so that whole spanner in the woodwork type thing. I don't even know what the best phrase is to use in regards to it. They lose a good coach in regards to stats in his career. You can argue, did he do the right things, do the wrong things, structure, people he played, the lines, etc. You can make those arguments. I believe it was Craig that's coming in to replace him.
Berube, yeah.
Yeah, Berube. So I believe, it's up to debate, whether you improve or not in that regard, and we'll have to see that through the season. I think as long as they make the playoffs, you can't really make the comparison to the playoffs,
Yeah,
because we
I,
we
I
know
don't
we know
think
this
it's
team can make it, but it's what they
yeah.
do in there.
The season doesn't matter for Toronto at this point. It's just get to playoffs and get past the first round, and then get past the second round. Like that's at the end of the day, that's when their season starts. They're going to make the playoffs, but it doesn't matter. They could finish first. They could win the President's Trophy. It does not matter. It comes down to what they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'll
I
say it
guess
right now, they still don't have the team for the playoffs.
no.
They still pretty small and weak in the forward line. I know Domi can throw a punch and stuff like that, but Domi, Knees, Robertson, um, Mana, all that, Nylander, all the skaters in a sense, and then on the back line, OEL, make some costly mistakes here and there, and even some of their other defenders are still a bit raw. So there's a lot of questions. Then the goaltending, can they take the next leap? And that is another big question. And if they can get the defense in front of them and the structure behind Berube there.
Yeah.
But yeah, my predictions they'll probably still make playoffs just because of the firepower they have. I don't expect it to make a punch unless Craig has a playoff system he can implement.
Do you think they should trade Mana?
Look, I'm on the boat that if I took over the Leafs, I would trade Matthews over because I am a big fan of Mana, play
Yeah.
style, PK, all of that. I know he's a winger. You prefer the centers over the wingers. But I don't like that Matthews has done these small term contracts in regards to years and then asking for the most amount. It's been very anti-organization friendly. I know you're doing best by himself, and mine is just going to follow suit. Pretty much all the players. If this guy's doing it, then why shouldn't I? And it's complete opposite to teams that set things like Boston that
Yeah. It's
take those
the lead
cap
by
hits
example.
to hey, we'll keep these core together because we're all friends, we're all that. We can bring in other people that we like, and then we can go for it. And yeah, so for me personally, I would trade Matthews, but I think he's got a no move clause now as well. So
Well,
there's
I also think if you were going to move Matthews, you would have moved him before
yeah, I would have
re-signing
done it
him.
before. At this point, you've just done
Exactly.
Nylander. Nylander has a no move clause. Look, Tavares, that's the only one, but you want to keep him because you need a second line center. So the only one you can move is Mana,
Yeah.
unless one of the guys, put up their hand that they're happy to go. So it has to be Mana, unfortunately, and you want something for him because of how good he is. And without him, I think you can still make playoffs, um, depending on
Well,
your
you're going to
return.
get a good return.
Depending on your return.
You're going to get a good return, and worst case scenario, you're getting $11 million in cap space. So you
Yep.
can go out and buy 2 players for 5.5 mil. That are going to be middle six forwards
Yeah.
or whatever that looks
You
like.
could get your
I
future second line center with that.
Yeah, and look, I'm in agreement with you. I would have moved on. I know Matthews is a big name and all the rest of this sort of stuff. But I do feel his selfishness in terms of 13.25 over the 4 years. If he locked it in for 8, I wouldn't give a crap. I'd be like,
Yeah.
yeah, cool,
Yeah.
whatever, that's
Exactly.
fine. That contract will be good value in the back end. Once the cap's gone up, but he's not giving this team value. He's going, I'm going to maximize my benefit. So yeah, I agree with you there, but I do feel like Mitch is the best one to move, is the one to move right now, and you've got to move one of them. As an organization, you aren't just doing the same thing over and over and over again, getting the same results. You have to move him and get something for him and then move on. I know he's a great player. I wouldn't want to lose him either, but you need to because it's not working. And at the end of the day, if you don't, you're just going to waste all of these players' careers. And yeah, and that's basically it. So I think we're both on the same page here. You've got to move him. You've got to get something for him. Re-signing him would be stupid. You'd just be wasting cap space at this point.
If you took a team
But
friendly
yeah.
deal, you'd re-sign him in a heartbeat.
Oh,
But
I mean, if
that's
he
not
turned
happening.
around and said,
That's not
"I'll
happening.
sign for $8 million,"
Yeah.
you'd sign him in a heartbeat, 100%. But he's not. He's going to take the 12 and a half, the 13 or whatever. So yeah, I guess we'll put it to you guys. Like, what do you think? Do you think Mitch Marner needs to be traded? Do you think one of the core four needs to be traded, or do you think re-sign him and just keep doing the same thing and hopefully it'll eventually work?
Mm. Because yeah, letting Tavares walk and getting 6 mil, that's 5 mil, but that goes straight to knees and other players. But I guess we should move on to another team. Has made some bigger moves in the market. A team they probably wouldn't expect. Nashville Predators done a lot of things, done a lot of good things. I've always been a fan of this team, loving the coach, loving the GM that they brought in. So it's just a good team to watch in general. They get older, but they bring in some firepower. They had great system last year. It was working great. The forechecking, shutting down teams. They just couldn't score. And they've kind of solved that problem, bringing in Stamkos and Marchessault, two big people coming in. 8 million with Stamkos and 5.5 with Marchessault. So a lot of money there, 13.5. They had the cap, but a very aging team now. It's obviously they've set that because of Roman Yossi in the core, with Forsberg, that they've probably got 3 years to go for it, and that's it. And that's what they've done. They've signed these two players for 4 years, so they've got a 4-year window. That obviously these players will drop off because of their ages of being 34 and 33 and whatnot. But I love what they've done. Extremely scary side. They've still got Saros as well, who has re-signed, which will probably go under the radar because of the
They're
moves they made.
ridiculously good,
A
like
ridiculously good.
price.
Yes, someone that a team like New Jersey or a team just needs a goaltender, and there's plenty of them. Someone should be poaching him. We know Boston lost both theirs, and it's hard to get those quality goaltenders. So for Nashville to keep him, uh, absolutely great there. And he's only 29, so kind of in his prime as well. So could even get better. What are your thoughts on this team? I didn't even bring up Brady Shea that they brought in. Maybe a bit too much in regards to money, but this team on paper
Yeah.
looks good.
Well, I'll just point something funny out, considering we were just talking about Toronto, but Nashville's entire forward line costs less than Toronto's core for.
Granted, Nashville couldn't score. It was their defense and goaltending and their forechecking
It's
offense, but
It is true, but I'm going to point out that we don't consider Nashville a star team, but they made it just as far as Toronto did last year.
and
And
honestly,
this,
they outplayed Vancouver. They should have gone.
well, that they
Yeah,
did, and yeah, like they realistically, if they didn't cough up that game, they probably do move to the
yeah.
second round. So, yeah, look, great moves already. It's clear we knew from last season that they were in a very unsure space of we can't rebuild because we've got these players, but we're not a team that's good enough to win the cup. Um, and they showed that, with the young players that they did have come through and the rest of the team they had, that they can compete. And one of the things that they can do well is defend and hold on. They can't score, and yes, you were right there. They struggle to score. However, they address that. They bring in one of the best power play goal scorers in Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, who's been absolutely unbelievable for Vegas.
And a playoff player.
And
Both playoff players.
and a playoff player. Like he won the Conn Smythe when Vegas
Mm.
won the cup. Like he's proven to be a playoff player as well. So yeah, two massive scoring players to really help that forward. Like you think about Nashville last season and go, okay, they can defend well. They got a great goaltender, can't score. Nashville this season still got a great defense, still got the same great goaltender. Oh, and now they can score. Okay, these guys could be really dangerous. So yeah, like you talk about Stamkos and Marsha, so it, it's a fantastic signing as well. I think the 5.5 for Marsha so is awesome. 8 mil for Stamkos could be a little bit too much, but again, you said it already. They're only going to be in this window for probably 3 years, 4 years, which is what those contracts are there for. So they don't really care after that point because they're going to crash anyway. It's got to happen at some point.
Yeah,
At
well,
least this gives them a chance to compete for 2 or 3 years.
they have no. Every contract they have is 4 years, or less. So that's their window. It's completely rebuilt after that, in a sense.
Marchessault's is 5 and Forsberg's is
Oh, okay,
7.
yeah. So I guess you can add those
Um,
on there, but yeah. So not too much long term. I know Brady Shea actually extended
it's 7 by
seven
7 as well.
years. Yeah, it was 7 years, wasn't it?
Or 7 by was 7 or 8? 7.
Yeah,
Yeah, 7. Yeah.
which is insane because he's already 30. So all these players are
That's
going to 37, 38 in regards to it, and look, that's great. You're going to keep a core that you can build your depth players around, which is solid. Obviously, Stamkos isn't the player he used to be, so you're not going to get that production that he was getting. Um, a lot of his points you could probably credit to forgetting his name right now, the Russian, not Kovalchuk, it is Tampa player. I'm forgetting it right now. He's the top one and is just run off the top of my head.
Kucherov, man. It's Kucherov.
Yeah, Kucherov. Yeah, that's the one. I was like, it's not Kovalchuk. I know it's Kovalchuk, but yeah, Kucherov. So a lot of his points can be credited to Kucherov, and just the
Yeah.
synergy that all those core had, and now he's going to have to rebuild that. But look, Marchessault, Stamkos, even Shea, they all bring leadership as well, playoff experience, obviously cup experience as well. It's hard to floor it. I know the contract on like Stamkos and even Shea is probably not good in regards to cap
I
amount,
think
but when you
the
have a
Shea one
4 year
more,
window,
but yeah.
you can live with it.
Well, exactly. Like these guys made the Stanley Cup final with the team they had, and it was all sort of falling apart, and they were looking like, okay, well, that's it. We're done essentially. Um, but they weren't done. So like they hadn't won a cup. They had good years, but they hadn't had a cup winning year. And their decisions here is, all right, let's rebuild and basically lose Forsberg, lose Saros, and throw out Roman Yossi's the rest of his career, basically trade him out. Like it was just absolutely gut this team and start again, or try and do a retool and just give it one last crack over a 3 year period, and then whatever happens after that happens. And I like this. I think they truly are a chance. Like if Stamkos and Marchessault can gel well with this forward pack and they can start to score, they could be top of the Central. There's no doubt in my mind.
Mm. And look, the Jeannot trade is still just getting better and better, obviously with the picks and what happened with that. So
The fact
look,
he's not in Tampa anymore.
yeah, and then they go and take Stamkos, which is look, he's not what he used to be, but it's sad to see. I guess that's another point we can talk about is just how these long-standing players, probably legends of the club and legends of the game, don't end up staying with the teams that they built their career around. Which is a little bit sad. Hopefully it doesn't happen to Crosby. I would like to see him stay there. I think that's one of the mistakes Brodor had. It was a little bit of a tarnish that for 1 year you go to St. Louis, in my opinion. I,
St. Louis Blues legend. Yep.
yeah, so I just think when you've done so much for the club, you've been there. I couldn't imagine leaving just to play or something like that. I think at that point I would want to be a club legend and stay at the club. So it is a shame that Stamkos doesn't do that. And I guess he can, be a club legend at Nashville and win 3, 4 cups over these years. But it
I mean,
it's a
Gretzky
little bit tarnished for
moved.
me.
Yeah, I mean Gretzky moved. I think Mark Messier moved a few times as well. I think in the hockey world the greats move quite a lot. Um, Say hello to my cat, everybody.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So look, my issue with Crosby is he's not winning another cup at Pittsburgh. However, if he got traded to a cup contender or he took a team friendly deal to a cup contender, he could win another cup. And instead of 3 cups, he could have 4 cups, maybe 5 cups. Like he's still an unbelievable player. And I think that's the same sort of thought process Stamkos has probably had here. Is look, I love Tampa, won 2 cups here, but I could leave and potentially go and get another cup somewhere else, plus get paid
I guess that
well.
you got to weigh that up. How much do you value a cup over being a club legend? I guess people might just
I mean,
forget
I still
forget.
think,
You, I just
yeah.
I just like having you were drafted with that team, you played with that team, you won and lost with that team. Through the worst, through the best, you stayed with them.
All right,
I like
I'll
loyal.
put
I like
I'll
loyalty.
I'll
That's all.
I'll put this to you then.
No.
Jonathan Tays.
Yes.
Jonathan Tays. He played his entire career in Chicago,
Hmm.
and he's only 34. He could have played on 35 or whatever he is, but he could have definitely played on. But he was hated. He was a franchise legend. Like they won what was it, 3 cups with him,
Hmm.
and they they turned on him so quickly. Just watching the fans turn around, and, they didn't want him there. So a lot of them did. I'm not saying all Chicago fans were like, get out of here, you useless. But the way they turned on him because he had a high contract after winning cups, which generally happens, just FYI.
Yeah.
You're paying them for what they've given you. But just because his production had dropped off, and he pretty much got forced out of Chicago, like it, it was horrible to see. Like I just don't like
Yeah, look,
that
I don't want to throw shade on
treatment
Chicago or
either.
anything, but I think it says more about the fan base. I know you want to be successful in something, but if someone wins me 3 cups and they're at the backstage of their career, they've played for a good few years, I'm happy to wear that
Yep.
personally for the dynasty that they created at the start of it, and so that's
That's
me.
my
That's me personally.
yeah.
It's not like he took another deal and took him to the cleaners because he's a club legend. Um, it was just a long term contract that aged badly.
Yeah.
If it was
Well,
like 39 and then he signs a $12 million deal because that's what got offered and he's not a 12 million player, then I understand it. It's like, hey, well, why aren't you taking a team friendly deal at this point? Um, and I guess that's my qualm with a lot of the other players around the league that are at the back end or middle stage of their career, and they're just taking the absolute maximum they can get. I think all of us here are probably, not in the millions and tens of millions of dollars that these players are. So, even $1 million would take that. So it's a little bit different when these players are like 10 million or 12 million. For us, we'd probably take the 10 million. It wouldn't matter as much, but obviously there's taxes and all that type of stuff. But at that point, just go to Nashville or Florida if you care about that.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's fair, and that's probably what a lot of players are doing. I guess that was just um my clapback for it was,
Yeah.
this guy gave everything to Chicago, played well in both, like all of their playoff series. He played relatively well, even up until he retired. Like I think his fourth to last season, he was a point a game player. His third to last season, he was almost a point a game player. And then his last 2 seasons, and you got to remember that's after the COVID affected seasons. He had a season off, which he missed, which was the COVID season. Um, and then his next 2 seasons were a little bit down, but even still, his last season was 31 points in 53 games. Like I get the
See,
club legend
my,
thing.
my my thing is, well, though, he didn't have a team around him. There's nothing around him. It didn't matter if he was on 10 mil or 1 mil.
Exactly.
There was nothing around him to build. Because when you have a dynasty like that, you eventually have to crash and burn. With Washington, they're going for it again, but they will crash and burn. And the harder you go for it, the worse the burn. Pittsburgh, they're experiencing it now. These teams that are having dynasties are eventually going to explode and then be at the bottom, and all the teams at the bottom will eventually go back to the top. you go through those cycles. New Jersey, another team, been bottom for 10 years, makes playoff, goes second round. Obviously, didn't have a good season last year. Granted, I'd put it all onto coaching, and injuries, obviously. But you've got these teams like Detroit, 10 years, whatever, being bad, come good. Vancouver, etc. Like these teams, you go through cycles, and the cycles are caused by the draft system and the cap system. You win a cup, all the players expect, cup money, I guess you could call it. So you got to
We'll
have
probably
players.
see
You got to have players
a
on
lot
long
of
term. That's it's the
yeah.
benefit of signing players on long term, but you take the risk of getting a Taves where the contract burns. Like people bag on Darnell Nurse from Oilers. He's not actually a bad player. It's just the cap hit's a
The
bit much. But
the cap hit is massive.
everyone hates him for it.
Yeah.
But he signed a contract because another defender signed that type of contract at the same time. So he got the money, and he's not a bad player though. Generally that's a player you would still pick him up. He went to the Cup final this year, so
Oh, mate, if he was $6.5, $7 million, you'd be like, take him. I'll take him in my team every day of the week. He makes some mistakes, but overall for that price, not bad. But for 9.2 or whatever he's worth, it is tough. But yeah, like you're right.
people
And
hate the contracts, not the player, and I think that's the problem in this era of hockey. People start hating on Mana, and it's not because of how he's playing or the type of player he is or his personality. It's just like, oh, you earn 11 million.
yeah,
And then
what a
people will
star.
fall in love with the young rookies, and it's not because the young rookies are really good. It's because, oh, you're worth $1 million, but you're playing like a 5 million player. Like, oh, I love you, but as soon as that player signs for 5 million, you're like, they don't love him as much. And I think that's a real big issue in today's hockey is people looking at the salary cap so much and not enough about the players and their
Unless
personalities.
unless they outperform their contract.
Yeah, if you outperform your
That's the
contract,
big thing.
a lot of
You're
people
fine.
hate McDavid because of the contract he's on. And even then, you could argue he's overperforming his contract.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just like so people hate him because of that, and it's just one of those things. But people, I know, like Boston, people will love players in Boston. Obviously, Marchand's an example. What do you call it? Not the best example, obviously, because
Yeah.
people just like him for other reasons. But some,
hmm
Bergeron and stuff like that. Great captain, takes team-friendly deals, and look, he was a great person and stuff. But you put a $13 million contract on that, people like him less. And
Oh,
uh,
exactly. Like
yeah,
people would hate on him massively if you had a $13 million price tag on him.
yeah.
Um,
So look, it's the way of the business. It's a bit toxic. You just look at the goaltender that just won the cup. Everyone was bagging on him for being a $10 million goalie, and now he's got a cup. So it's one of those things where you got to look at the player, not the cap. And I think that's a good and a bad thing that we get to see that visual side of things and what the players are earning.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is good. It's good to see. And, you do have to hold players accountable. You want to earn that big money, well, you've got to actually perform to
Mm.
a certain level. But yeah, I think there is that expectation on some players where it's, yes, they're earning good money. Yes, they're performing. Okay, they haven't quite gotten there in terms of winning a cup. But yeah, like Bob's probably you mentioned Bob, but like he's probably a prime example. Last year was his 6th year on a 10 million dollar contract over 8 years. Like that's for the first 4 years of his contract, even 4.5, because last season when they made the Stanley Cup final, he was not great. So 4.5 years, and you could be like, that was Bob was terrible for 4.5 of those years. But the last 18 months, he's been a god and just won them a cup.
Yep.
So like sometimes, the contract might look shit, but at the end of the day, one cup changes everything. Everyone's gonna remember Bob as a Stanley Cup winning um, a goaltender. He'll be in the Hall of Fame, and he is a fantastic goaltender. But they won't remember those 4 and a bit years of him just playing like garbage for what
Yep.
was meant to be one of the best goaltenders in the league.
Yeah, look, the season that he signed that, just after that, he was playing absolutely ridiculous. So it was kind of warranted, especially with Vasilevsky as well. But that's the thing. These players obviously want to sign as much as possible because you want to get paid as much as possible. More heat has to go on these GMs, and they need to be held accountable more. The problem is these GMs just do carouseling between teams. Um, they do a bad job, and then somehow they just move to another department, I guess you could say, and keep their job. Another company in a sense. So it's just like watching CEOs run a company to the ground, and then they go to another bigger, better company, and somehow run that one to the ground. It's a weird world we live in. It's who you know, not what you know. All us armchair GMs would probably say, um, in regards to how good we think we would run it. But I guess they got the decisions to make, and we have to hold them accountable as fans, I guess, and that's our job. But on that, I don't have too much more to say. Toronto, at the end of it, look, a couple good additions, but not enough. Obviously, because the core four situation needs to be addressed, and Nashville staying older or even getting older, I guess you could say. But they've obviously said this is a 3-4 year window that they've got here. So they're going for it, and kudos to them. You want to see that from pretty much everyone in the league.
Well, I guess, we'll put this to you guys out there. Can Toronto make an Eastern Conference final with the core four? And where do you think Nashville will finish this season? And are they a true contender? Let us know in the comments below. But other than that, yeah, that's it from me as well.
Yeah, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more hockey content. Honestly, we'll be posting more content coming up, just covering postseason stuff, preseason stuff. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And yeah, don't forget to comment below on what you think of this video, how we did. Happy to receive any good and bad criticism. We take it on the chin. But till next time, catch you guys.
Bye, guys.